Yeah. I had one NHL owner last year, I won't name him, ask me, he said, look, he goes, I understand that I need to write the check. So to put a, you know, an average NHL arena, to put a plug-and-play system in right now is somewhere between $3 to $5 million. Mm-hmm. He goes, I understand, and my people keep telling me I have to write the check. Can you explain to me why? You know, and so I put it in the context to him. Look, very simply, you've got 20,000 people in your building, 41 nights a year. They want to promote your product. Consider them your brand ambassadors. You not providing them with that ability, you're actually preventing them from doing it.
Totally.
Any owner of any business would love it if their customers would promote their product for them. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about. And he kind of got it after that, and it was kind of a light bulb moment. Still didn't write the check as far as I know. But.
Final panel of the conference, Enhancing the Fan Experience. If I could have all our panelists come and take a seat as I introduce you. Taylor Coulis, he is the head of mobile partnerships at CBS Interactive. He's a graduate of the University of Western Ontario. He worked at the Score for 6 years prior to landing his current job in February of this year. Jeff Hunt is the president, Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group. That is the ownership group of the Ottawa Redblacks, the Ottawa 67s, and the Ottawa Fury FC. So if you're ever in Ottawa, you know who to talk to. Bill Manning is the president of Toronto FC and Toronto Argonauts. Prior to this role, he served as president to both Real Salt Lake and Rio Tinto Stadiums. Also held roles with the Philadelphia Eagles, Houston Rockets, and Major League Soccer. We're also going to add Jeff Atkinson, who you just heard from, to this panel. And last but not least, our moderator, Mark Francis. He works as a lecturer in sports business at UCLA's Anderson Center for Managing Enterprise in Media, Entertainment, and Sports. He holds an MBA and MA in Sports Administration, as well as a diploma in University Teaching from the University of New Brunswick. He's also served as head coach of the men's hockey program at UCLA since 2010, where he was selected as one of the 2 finalists for the Pac-8 Coach of the Year Award in 2012. So the final panel, Enhancing the Fan Experience.
Great, thanks, Caroline. And certainly a pleasure to be back in Toronto after a couple of years. Always nice to get home for a Maritimer. Great panel today. I want to talk about the, certainly enhancing the fan experience, like Caroline said, and I want to approach it from the standpoint of the in-stadium experience for the most part, because it's that part of the industry has changed an awful lot over the past, really 4 to 5 years, and I really want to dig in on that. So from that theme. So in the first question, where do you guys think, and Jeff, probably we'll start with you on this. Where's ownership on the understanding for the need of not just connectivity, but high-density Wi-Fi connectivity in stadiums? 2 points I want to make before you answer. So as 2 examples of not having it, at the end of the 2017-2018 season, the NHL, 5 teams still did not have it. I won't name them, I don't want to embarrass them, but 5 teams. In LA right now, 2 of the major football stadiums don't have it, Rose Bowl, Coliseum. And I can't imagine that happening in 2018 still. Second piece, Major League Baseball attendance. They're down 4% in stadium. They were down 27% in their ratings in the World Series, despite having major brands connected to the whole Wi-Fi pieces. They've missed, Major League Baseball basically missed social media for the first 10 years by not allowing it by their teams and then not responding on the connectivity in stadium. So where is ownership on this?
Well, I remember when we were getting into the final stretch of building TD Place in 2014. Well, we started construction in 2012. In 2012, I think we had some modest connectivity in the plan, and we had to make an audible, very shortly before the construction was complete, to spend an extra $5 million that we had not budgeted to upgrade Wi-Fi and just cellular usage, and we thought, wow, we're leading edge, we're cutting it, we're really ahead of the curve here. And now in 2018, I almost think it's like saying you've got bathrooms or you've got concessions. It's an absolute minimum. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know that it would be a debate anymore. Yeah. If you're trying to reach and attract and keep young fans, they got to be able to communicate.
Absolutely, yeah. I always describe it as the Wi-Fi system you put in is like building a house. It's the foundation of your house. If you live in Newfoundland, you've got to build a basement. And that's the foundation, right, or the whole thing crumbles or nothing else works properly throughout the year. And that's the way with Wi-Fi. Bill, what are your thoughts? Yeah,
we at BMO Field is 12 years old, so we don't have Wi-Fi. And so we're kind of on the other end of the spectrum, and it's very difficult. It's one of the, we're going to make the investment as we go into next season, and it's not cheap. But I think Jeff is right. At part of any new stadium, you have to have it, all the stadiums that were built prior to kind of this new age of technology, we're catching up, and it's definitely a demerit in terms of the fan experience when you don't have the Wi-Fi. So we feel that crunch, and we just have to bite the bullet to spend the money, and there's no incremental revenue associated with that money. It's just better fan experience.
Do you think that ownership understands that there is a bit of a return on that in terms of the investment, or not? From a sponsorship perspective, from a fan engagement perspective, you always hear the term ROI tossed around in sports now. I don't know that people understand like the different variations of it, and one of them being return on influence as opposed to a monetary return when you're talking about building your brand. Do you think there's that understanding?
Yeah, ours isn't a monetary. It really is a fan experience, which I guess long term is monetary in that the thinking is if a fan enjoys their experience at your facility, they're going to come back and buy more tickets and come back. And if they don't enjoy the experience, they won't. And so that is one of the, I think, it's a hallmark. You have to have Wi-Fi. You have to have connectivity. And so, MLSE, we don't want to be behind the 8 ball on that. So it's really important we do that. But there's not a immediate ROI. It's just you're doing it to have a better fan experience, which long term will help you.
Right. Taylor?
Yeah, and I was just going to jump in and say, as the mobile sports app guy, Wi-Fi is kind of important. Yeah. And I think the whole concept of mobile phones, everybody used the word second screen for years, right? It's a second screen, and I think everybody in this room, what we're starting to see now is it's the first screen. It's the primary screen. If you're watching, you're at your house, you're watching a game, you're sending text messages, you're making phone calls, you're following along, hopefully in a sports app, CBS Sports or The Score, and so I think you're seeing a lot of really exciting things come to fruition, where whether it's teams or leagues are empowering fans to leverage their phone, whether it be in-seat service or whether it be beacon networks. Hey, you can buy one beer, get one half off at the beer garden around the corner. Don't steal my next question. Oh, so there you go. So jumping ahead. But yeah, I think what it does is it allows you to empower your fans to enjoy the game, experience the main event that they're there for, but also use the tool that they're so accustomed to using on a daily basis to enhance the experience. No pun intended.
What do you think, Jeff?
So Wi-Fi for us at our venues, being temporary, is not really an achievable goal. But one thing we've learned in terms of enhancing the experience is definitely the mobile experience. A lot of the telecom companies have cows they can bring to the facility to spike the connection for the phone. So we work with the local telecoms in each of the respective markets. And unbranded, they will bring their technology in and allow for better reception on the phone service as the fan is going through the venue for that day. So we can't achieve Wi-Fi, unlikely, because of the venues being the nature of temporary. However, there are other resources out there you can look to really improve it.
Yeah. There are some temporary solutions out there. We can sidebar conversation, but definitely out there.
I just want to add one thing. Jeff. Obviously, the Wi-Fi, this is all about younger fans and how they consume anything. But just to put a finer point on it, we have a 25,000 seat stadium that probably for a typical Redblacks game would be about 40% 50 and above.
Yeah.
We have this annual game, anybody from Ottawa would know, the Panda game, where it's Carleton versus Ottawa U, and we have 24,000. Every single person is 20 years old or 21 years old, and it stretches our infrastructure to the max. Like you can barely send a text. Yeah. So it's, again, just to put a finer point on it, that younger fan, that's all you see them doing is looking at their phone.
And this is why, to your point, this is why I put the emphasis on high density Wi-Fi systems, because you have to talk bandwidth. If you get into a stadium, say the size of Sky Dome, it's got 48,000 people in there for a baseball game, Joe Carter hits a home run, 90% of those people are going to want to share high, dynamic content, replays, that kind of stuff.
By the way, there's an ROI right there.
No question.
You know, if you get, I don't know how many impressions out of a typical game, but it's significant.
And that's what I was going to say. It's expanding the conversation to just connectivity in general, right? Like, whether it's LTE or whether it's Wi-Fi, like, do you give your fans in the arena the ability to share what they're experiencing and connect with other fans and follow along with other sports if they're, if they have a fantasy team or whatever. And I think it's just in general, sometimes to your point, if you go somewhere with no Wi-Fi, your phone's almost a cinder block for 2.5 hours. You can't get signal, you can't send messages, let alone do all the cool stuff we're talking about, like leveraging Wi-Fi and sharing high-def video.
And I guess a couple more points on that. Like, it started out when Wi-Fi in stadiums started to become a real thing, 2014, 2015. It was a result of largely out of the SEC and the NCAA, where students were not going to games because they could not use their phones. So ADs were like, oh my God, this is affecting our budget. We're losing ticket revenue, that kind of thing, right? And the reality is now it's not just millennials that won't go. It's everyone.
Oh yeah.
And so now it's that much more important. And so now let's pretend we all have that high density Wi-Fi, can accomplish all these things, the things that can be used for. So think about friction points or resistant points as you're sitting there as fans, deciding whether or not to get into your car, go to a game, that kind of thing, drive to Ottawa for a Redblacks game. You're talking about traffic, you're talking about parking, you're talking about ticketing, in-seat service for food potentially. Jeff, you and I talked on the phone quite a bit about food and beverage and the use of the queue lines, how that could be more efficient. All of those types of things. Something simple as bathroom lines that can all be alleviated or reduced in terms of their friction when you have the high-density Wi-Fi systems. And then we're into app development. So Taylor, this is for you. Where do you think the industry is and that level of understanding that these things can be developed to handle all of these friction points or improve them?
Yeah, I think you alluded to it in the beginning. Some teams and leagues and facilities are further ahead than others in understanding the need for this. And everything you just mentioned, these are standard workflows, right?
Oh, yeah.
Showing up to the game and parking, going to buy beer, going to the washroom, right? And this is where the mobile geek comes out in me, where all you're trying to do is optimize this, right, to make the experience better. So you spend less time waiting in line for a bathroom, and it takes you less time to go buy a beer. Those bottlenecks cost facilities money, right? That's the one thing I always think of when I see a line, in between the first or second intermission, is imagine there was a way to make this line go from 14 minutes to 3 minutes, right? Yeah. How much more beer would you sell? I mean, that's a conversation for another day. Maybe that'd be a bad thing, you'd overserve, but I think, there are some teams, and MLSE is one of them, that leads the way in fan engagement, in-seat service, and so teams are at different parts of this process, but I think it is the future. You're going to need it, because it's just so funny that you mentioned. I never even thought about something like that. How funny it would be if you look at the stress on your bandwidth on one game, where you said your average attendance is 50 plus, and then your stress on your infrastructure during another game where the attendance on average is 20 years old. The amount of data they use, what they do at the game, whether it's a concert versus a CFL game, the demo is going to change, which means the expectations of the infrastructure is going to change too. Yeah.
I had one NHL owner last year, I won't name him, ask me, he said, look, he goes, I understand that I need to write the check. So to put an average NHL arena, to put a plug-and-play system in right now is somewhere between $3 to $5 million. Mm-hmm. He goes, I understand, and my people keep telling me I have to write the check. Can you explain to me why? And so I put it in the context to him. Look, very simply, you've got 20,000 people in your building, 41 nights a year. They want to promote your product. Consider them your brand ambassadors. You not providing them with that ability, you're actually preventing them from doing it.
Totally.
Any owner of any business would love it if their customers would promote their product for them. And that's what we're talking about. And he kind of got it after that, and it was kind of a light bulb moment. Still didn't write the check as far as I know. But anyway. So Bill, I'll point this one to Bill. To Jeff. When we were talking, all this technology stuff, everything's great, right? if you look at the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, I mean, if you guys get a chance to look it up on YouTube, the video on that stadium is unbelievable with their tech. It's an IBM solution that they put in, and they're actually using Watson so fans can go in, you know, where's the shorter bathroom, like all of those friction points that we talked about. They've named it after Arthur Blank. They call it Arthur. I mean, it's state-of-the-art stuff. It's unbelievable. But, Jeff, you and I talked about, and you said this from your perspective, was, you know, we have to be careful not to fall in love with the technology to the point where we're giving up the human aspect of the experience. Well, almost taking the fans for granted.
Yeah, I think we talked leading up to this. You come to a conference, there's all kinds of young people here. You want to say something profound or leading edge, or, you know, and the reality is when it comes to the fan experience, and I think there's all kinds of great new technology coming along that may well enhance the fan experience, but what I still hear about the most from our fans, in particular, you mentioned every touch point along the way, the parking, the drive-in, the line to get, you know, your ticket scanned, security now is such a big issue, washrooms, food and beverage. I mean, all of those things, if one of those goes really wrong, it doesn't matter if you win by a landslide and everything else goes good, that's going to be a bad experience. You know, there is a little bit of a back to the basics, and the number one area of complaint that I hear about is concessions. And there's two consistent, well, maybe three. One, long lines. And a lot of food and beverage operators, they operate on tight margins. They pay the teams whopping percentage of what they get, and they got to run it razor tight. And if they can get their labor from 12% to 11%, that's where they get their bonus. And what does that mean? That means instead of 3 concessions open, there's 2. And that means every lineup's 50% longer. And it's a short-sighted, you know, very minor in the overall scheme of things for a sports team, a very minor amount of income, and it's a big problem. And then, you know, you wait a long time, then what, for the privilege of paying twice the price as you would on the street for maybe not even that cold a beer or not even that hot a hot dog.
Mm-hmm.
And you miss some of the game.
Well, and you miss some of the game on top of that, or you miss more than you should. And so, yes, technology and all of those innovations is really exciting, but I think in particular there's certain things that we've reached a tipping point in, and my partners wouldn't love me for being up here and saying something like this because concession revenue is a big part of our model, but I think that for the sake of an extra buck or two that you make by charging $12 for a King can or whatever, take a little bit. People don't complain about ticket prices. I'd rather charge $5 extra a ticket and let them feel like they're getting, I'm not saying a bargain, but not getting ripped off. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, they've hit their threshold when it comes to this stuff, and it's the #1 area of complaint. I'm sure, Bill, you get the same. Yep. Everything else is aces, but everything to do with concessions is always the biggest source of problems.
Yeah, no doubt. Bill, I'll point this one to you. One of the major challenges facing pro sports in general, and it coincides with this mobile situation, is the advent of the large screen TV and the home viewing experience, and it's kind of mirrored each other in terms of timing. And now you get to the point where, you know, we're obviously in the CFL, every city, you know, is cold. You know, you play in places that are cold. Toronto has a dome, Vancouver has a dome, and that's it, right? And it's affecting attendance. And you know, I know in LA, if I got tickets to USC, UCLA Saturday night, do I really want to spend 3 hours in the car, or do I want to sit beside my beer fridge and my 52-inch TV? What is it that we can do in the sports industry aside from the game form or the game experience itself, so the actual play? What can we do in stadium creatively out of the box to incentivize people to come to the stadium to experience things that they can't get at home? Because that's the ultimate solution. I
mean, that's the age-old question, right?
No question.
You know, look, I think there's a lot of different formulas. There's a lot of different teams that do it really well, and there's teams that don't. So I think there's a few principles. You know, one, fans want to see a competitive product, right? They want to see that. And what's very interesting, I find, with the younger generation is they want to be part of something. They want to be, it's a real communal, be around something. Whereas I think a little bit of the the older, 35 plus, the big screen TV is harder to get away from. The younger generation actually wants to go out and they want to be part of something, and we're seeing that with our soccer team, that our demographic is skewing younger as that team has grown. But I think, it's you got to have good in-stadium experience. One of the things we've tried to do with the Argos is we run it now similar to a Raptors game in terms of what's happening in between plays. To Jeff's point, Mercedes-Benz Stadium did the concessions where they actually went really low price with some of the staple items, hot dogs, burgers, and so on. And what they did, though, is the specialty items they really went high with. And what they found was a lot of people were buying the specialty items, which I found really interesting. And they sold a ton of hot dogs. They made it up on quantity. So it's something we looked at with the Argos this year, and we get about a third of the attendance for the Argos, and we do TFC, and we sold almost the same amount of beer. Yeah. And we had cheaper prices, so that was pretty interesting for us. On how much quantity it was able to move. But it's, there's many different scenarios. I think a competitive team, friendliness, customer service. You just can't forget customer service. One of the things, you work with third parties, with security and with cleaning and everything else. But the thing that we strive at our stadium is just be nice. We use the word nice and smile. It's so much, and that human touch. If we ever forget about the human touch in our business, we should stop doing what we were doing, because people still want that. I always joke, everyone has a favorite restaurant, right? And why do you go to your favorite restaurant? Generally because they know who you are, and they smile, they treat you well, they sit you nice, they say hello. I try to, our stadium, I ask everyone, treat it like we're a restaurant and we're inviting people to come in and enjoy the experience, and have them come back. Let them feel like it's their favorite restaurant. It's, and so it's just one of those things where I don't think you can ever forget the human touch that kind of Jeff pointed out.
Right. I'm going to have each of you guys jump in here on this one. Jeff, why don't you tackle it?
It's interesting for us, just to loop a couple points back together. We didn't have credit card technology in a lot of our food and beverage stations till this year. That was something we just didn't have, and we had a lot of key learnings. The key learning was a lot of people don't buy beer before 12:30 for whatever reason. Yes, we're selling beer, but we're staffing it like we're going to sell beer everywhere at the venue. Well, now, with the technology that we have, is we can put our staff in better situations to serve our guests. So the technology helps us in that capacity. I think as well, can't buy experiences are something that really help eliminate the TV factor, where someone may decide and stay at home and watch TV. Well, let's give them an experience they can't buy. So with one of our programs with the Champions Club, we allowed them to do a pre-race grid walk. So instead of staying home and sitting on your couch and waiting for the hour pre-game show to be done, you can actually mix and mingling on the grid before the start of an IndyCar race. And that's a program we do exclusively through our company at our 4 properties. So unique programs like that we try to create to eliminate some of the clutter that we see as people are making decisions whether or not to purchase tickets.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good points. Jeff, before I get to you, you guys can all probably attest to this. What do you see, when you go to a stadium? This is to the thinking out of the box aspect, away from the sport itself. So what do you see in the Jumbotron when you go to a game? I don't care if it's here at Scotiabank Arena or Rogers Center or Dodger Stadium, or what do you always see Jumbotron? You see Kiss Cam. You can predict, I don't care where you go, you see the Kiss Cam, you see the shell game, some variation of it, that kind of stuff, and it's so repetitive throughout the industry. And I'm talking about thinking outside the box, thinking differently. That's what I talked about to my students, is stop doing what everybody else is doing. Let's get more creative with the in-stadium experience. So back to that same question, Jeff, I know you're a pretty creative guy, and I haven't been to Ottawa, but I'd like to get there.
Well, I think that, one of our go-tos is fans having fun, and just continuing to show that. Fans want to see themselves on the screen. They want to, and to just see fans having fun. I mean, that's certainly a key, simple one that never gets old.
Right.
For the record, I don't think we do Kiss Cam and shell games anymore.
Don't.
Yeah, and all I would say to that is I think the most important thing I took away from something you said earlier is understanding the demo of who's in the crowd and what do they want and what do they need. And I think different fan bases, if you're a facility like Scotiabank Arena, you have Raptors games, you have Leaf games, you have concerts, right? And those are 3 completely different crowds, looking for completely different things. Some areas, you can't get a table at the Platinum Club during a Leafs game, and you can't get in to buy apparel during a Raptors game, right? So there are all these different nuances, and people are looking for different things. And when you listen to that data, right, when you say, okay, I started using credit cards recently, and I found out this is when people buy concessions, this is where, when you listen to that, I think you can kind of, like I was alluding to earlier, give fans what they want, and whether that's by demo or by game or by league, whether it's NBA or NHL, and selfishly going back to the mobile element, I think leveraging a fan when they go there. Unfortunately, we're in the era of, I heard somebody mention it earlier, the ADD era, and I think it's less about that, and it's more about, sports fans are more complex now, right? Yeah. I think, when I think back to, even how I consumed sports information 5-6 years ago, when an app like The Score ended up on a BlackBerry, to now, you're ingesting sports data like finance guys ingest stock data, right? It's not one game for 3 hours. I mean, I'm there, I'm at the stadium, I'm watching the game, I'm enjoying it. Giovinco just scored an amazing goal, but I also bet on the Thursday night NFL game, and I also have a fantasy team going on. So, I just think, catering to those nuances depending on the demo, and designing and improving, and always trying to adjust your approach to the experience is the right way to go. And I think you're seeing a lot of stadiums and a lot of teams and a lot of leagues go that route. NBA with social, and NFL, that I didn't know about that with Mercedes Stadium. That sounds very exciting and very cool, and it's new and different, and it's obviously working. Yeah.
How much are people looking outside, not just your leagues, your individual leagues, but outside the sports industry for help in terms of guest experience, guest engagement, that kind of thing? How much of that do you think is going on?
Well, I think more and more. I was just in Vegas, and they had Cirque du Soleil producing their, intermission show, and I think there's one of the evolutions is there's less and less emphasis on the game on the ice or the game on the field, and more. That's just a campfire that everybody's gathered around and looking at somewhat. Yeah. The game is not as important anymore, and it's getting less so. Yeah. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it doesn't matter. It's what's happening. And I just want to point out one thing. If there's, we're talking about change and what's happening. One of the best design features about TD Place was a fluke, and I'll admit it. I was told to go down and see Mellon Arena in Pittsburgh because they have these massive open concourses. Now, we were thinking at the time that the biggest benefit to that is that when people are lining up for concessions, they're not missing the game, so they're more likely to stay in line and spend that extra money. And that was the logic. What we found, and if you've been to TD Place in Ottawa, there's this massive, from one end to the other, we call it the largest drink rail in the world. And it probably, if it holds 2,000 people, there's 3,000 people there. And it's become like this nightclub that has a football game going on in the background. And my prediction is, I'm going to say it here because I think I said it to you, the way we design stadiums, giant grandstands with seat after seat after seat, that's in 10 years, that's not how they're going to be designed. Because nobody, especially young fans, don't want to go and sit in a chair and stare at a field or an ice for 2.5, 3 hours. What they get that you don't get in your living room, because if that's all they want to do, they are better off to stay in their living room. Yeah. They want to socialize, and they want to mix, and they come in groups of 6 and 8 and 10, and it's not how your dad consumed a football game. It's a whole different experience. They come to the party. I can tell you, I've talked to so many 20-somethings and 30-somethings that have never sat in their seat. Yeah. And so again, this all-seat configuration is going to go slowly evolve out. And I mean, I'm not saying there's not going to be any seats, but the ratio of big gathering areas versus big seating areas is going to completely flipped.
Right.
So I want to jump in and speak on this a little bit, because we redesigned our facility in 2016, and one of the issues we had with motorsports is, since you have a temporary street course that's 2.89 kilometers, it's really spread out. How do you connect to that emotion? And you don't. Everything is disconnected. So when we redesigned the racetrack in 16, we put the majority of our grandstand seats right together. Then on top of that, we focused on community areas, and those community areas we used to call beer gardens. We market a lot towards mom and families, so we don't like calling them beer gardens, a place to get inebriated, but those beer gardens became restaurants, became good community places for those to enjoy our product. And with that, if you're going to be watching from a big screen in a grandstand, and on our big screens, we show the race almost as you would see it on TV. So it's constantly flowing like you'd be at home. You see that exact same track feed in our general admission restaurants or beer gardens. So we've actually added, since 16, 3 or 4 beer gardens we previously didn't have.
Yeah. Before I moved to LA, and I moved there full time in 2010, I was not aware of the themed entertainment industry. I knew of Disney, and I knew of, Universal Studios, that kind of thing. But since I've been in LA, I've had a lot of relationships with these types of companies, and they are the best in terms of designing guest experiences. I mean, Disney, every day when you go there, it's a special experience. You could go 365 days in a row, and it's a special experience. And that's the thing I kind of want to emphasize, I guess, to some of the students out here, is that if it's not special, if it stops being special to go to a sporting event, people are going to stop going.
And what makes it special for one group of people is different than what makes it special for another. Like, I was sitting there listening to you say, groups of friends, they're going to go, 8 people buy 8 tickets, and then they're just going to sit like this the whole time, right? The game's on the field, but they're there for, yes, to watch the game, but they're there, I was having a really good conversation at lunch about this earlier, actually. It's what makes Green Bay so special, right? Like, if it snows, they open the doors and the community goes and shovels the field. It's a community thing, right? In the CFL, the Rough Riders, when the Grey Cup was here, I was walking down the street and the Rough Riders weren't even in the Grey Cup, and you just saw swaths of fans because they just wanted to hang out with their friends that all have there's something in common. They cheer for the same team, right? So I think adjusting the expectation to, yes, you have to put a good product on the field. Your team has to be good. They have to win. But I think it's an ever-changing, especially nowadays, and it's changing at a rapid pace. The NBA, you look at social media, how many fans that follow LeBron James and follow different teams that might not even be huge basketball fans, right? Like, they might not even be basketball purists or played it or love it or keep track of it, but they just love the culture, right? So I think these are all different things that are bringing people to the game and to the stadium, and I think they're different groups of people that will all contribute to the fan experience around them and to the stadium and to the teams. And so I think there's a lot of different things that can be done moving forward. There's
again, for the group here and for you guys, there is a group based in LA called the TEA, which is the Themed Entertainment Association. And all of these companies, the Disneys of the world and Edwards Technologies, who've spoken here before, are part of that. And I know the University of Tennessee, their athletic department is working with Disney now on kind of redesigning their guest experience. University of Texas worked with a company called Tenfold Entertainment out of LA to redesign their guest experience and their fan experience, if you will, in a sports context. So that's a very important organization. I know the Pittsburgh Penguins joined it as the first full-time member out of the 4 major pro sports here a few years ago. And I think it's important that we look outside of, we don't get so tunnel vision and myopic that we just think we have all the answers within our sports, within our organizations, within our sports, within our leagues, industry, and look outside of it. I think it's a pretty important thing. Bill, one of the you're in the soccer world, obviously, as well as football, but soccer, and Brian's a huge soccer fan. Huge.
I've heard.
So this question's for him. But no, I mean, from a fan experience perspective, when you go to soccer games, there's some unique things going on there. I would love to be able to see adopted somehow in some of the other sports. The supporters group, as an example, the new stadium in LA, I know the LAFC have built. I mean, I don't know what the angle is of that supporters group in terms of the stadium. It's got to be 45 degrees. I mean, it is unbelievable. They've got railings holding people up. So it's right on top of the crowd and that kind of thing. Like, how do you think things like that, or maybe you can speak to some of the other things that soccer does, how can that translate into other sports, and how can we get fans to adopt that kind of behavior?
You know, it's interesting because I'm trying to think of the right word for how our supporters groups enjoy the games at TFC. Enthusiastically wouldn't necessarily be tolerated at Scotiabank Arena. We in fact are going to change some of our configuration and going standing room only, safe standing it's called, with the rails, because they don't want to sit, they don't want to sit in an assigned seat.
That's what they did at FC.
They want to be communal. They want to enjoy the game the way they enjoy it, which isn't, and there's a lot of people that love our supporters groups and are always like, I love those guys in the South End, I just don't want to sit with them.
Yeah.
And it's it's probably a group, in our case, maybe 1,500 people or so that are part of organized supporters groups, but they are passionate and they follow the team. They're the ones that meet the team at the airport, and they're there when the bus arrives, and they travel on the road. But they are going to enjoy the game under a different set of rules than kind of the etiquette of an NBA game or an NHL game or Major League Baseball game, and even in football. You couldn't go to an NFL game and have flags waving around without, some kind of confrontation. And in soccer, they tend to put up with it because it's part of that experience. And now we have to have it in an area. So there's generally, most stadiums, there's a supporters group area. Yeah. And generally you enjoy the game where people are standing the whole time and there's flags going on. But there's always a line, and Jeff knows, we had a group out in Ottawa that went a little over the top, right? And
well, it was the first time in 5 years we got national news coverage. So, thank you.
But there's a passion about these fans that they really, really care in a different way than some of the fans do for the other sports. And I think we're probably, we're not the first adopters. If you go to South America or Europe, it even started there, and then I think. In Canada and North America and the U.S., these supporters groups have really taken over, and they've provided such a great vibe in the stadium with chanting and singing all game long. And it's something that's organic, and you have to have a fine balance between encouraging it but not allowing it to distract from the game, like what happened with us in Ottawa. Yeah. And so our players enjoy it. Our guys make it a point to go, when they score a goal, they want to be in that area. They want to jump in the crowd with those guys. But it is it's one of the unique things in soccer that we can say is that we have these groups of supporters that appreciate the game and enjoy the game differently than any of the other sports, and it makes for a great fan experience.
Absolutely, it certainly does. The passion really plays in. Let's talk ticketing for a second. I know we just had a little bit of a ticketing panel. I personally think, and I've experienced it, I think probably everybody has, my professional and personal opinion, ticketing is broken. Is from where I stand. And I would love to have your guys' feedback as owners and presidents and that kind of thing, is what do we do to get it back? Like, what do we, I'll give you an example. I went to the NCAA men's volleyball final, Pauley Pavilion, in April. And I'm in my car and I'm on my way there. It's about a 12-mile drive. And I jump on them on the phone, I'm texting, and I'm trying to buy a ticket at the same time or whatever. The ticket's $16. I buy the ticket. I'm not really paying attention to the receipts and everything. I just got confirmation. Okay, I got the ticket. Great. I go to pick up the ticket. They give me the receipts, $25. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And they're, well, there's fees for Ticketmaster and this and that. And I know Ticketmaster's under investigation now. This whole secondary market that we talk about, as being a wonderful thing for fans and all of that. And I just think it's crap. And I just want to know what you guys think in terms of the ticketing. Is how do we fix it?
Don't drive and text.
I think it's so important to have your ticket price and advertise as all in. We've done it for 5 years. If we're going to say our ticket prices are $50, they're $50.
Yeah.
There might be a processing charge if you choose to get it mailed, or you get some type of spiff with your ticket package. But I think that's where it starts, is the ticket pricing. I don't think we need to be misleading the consumer of what the price is for the actual ticket. It's $50, let it be $50.
Yeah.
We're a lot different, though, than the stick and ball sports, but that's just a policy we've done at all our venues.
Yeah. I had a conversation with Jeff Stipek out in Vancouver last year, and he came from the restaurant world. He's the CEO of the Vancouver Canucks, and he said, look, he goes, when I used to, we talked about this, and he said, when I used to run the keg, nationwide, he said, we always talked about protecting the steak. That was their core product. He goes, and since I've come here, we talk about protecting the ticket. But my God, as an industry, we have not done a very good job of protecting that. Jeff, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, when we first started, the ticketing fee is almost going the same. It's the next big form of revenue that we've invented.
Yeah.
And I fought against it. I hate it. But the truth is, especially, for example, for us, we do a lot of concerts. The ticketing revenue is the ticket surcharge revenue is the only revenue we make. Now, most bands, they take 100% of the ticket sales, and maybe even a share of the concessions. So it's the only revenue stream left, especially if you're competing to try and get hard-to-get acts.
Sure.
That, might come to Ottawa, might not. Our ticketing fees is like I say, our only form of income. And to my dismay, fans, the buying public, they know about it. They're like, it's not uncommon. I mean, I just went to a Broadway show. The ticket on a $120 ticket was $25. Ticket fee or convenience fee. I love that one. Yeah. Okay, I want to go to the show. I guess I got to pay the fee. Like there's just an acceptance. I don't know if the fan thinks it's broke. That's
Bill.
Yeah.
Sorry, Taylor.
I was just going to say from my perspective, I think you're just seeing, again, as technology evolves and to the point that you mentioned earlier, really it comes down to it's becoming very hard to price a ticket and understand how it's valued. And I think there's a lot of gambling that goes on. And what I mean by that is buying large blocks of tickets, hoping you can break even or make a profit. Some are going to go for zero, and that's why you have empty seats, but then some are going to go 400% more than you paid for it. And year over year, these guys get smarter and smarter. And I know MLSE has made some recent moves to try to combat that a little bit, but I think it's beyond just that. I think it's in entertainment, it's in concerts, it's everywhere else. And it's kind of like the democratization of ticket pricing, where the market determines what a ticket's worth, and if it's overpriced, no one's going to buy it, and if it's underpriced, people are going to buy it and make a profit on it. So I think, to your point, there's still a ways to go to figure out what's a ticket worth. It's worth a different price at a different time to a different person in a different stadium at a different team, and it's kind of hard to figure out how to value that.
That's true. Bill.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just buying an airline ticket for my son, and you have to pay for the seat over and above the price of the ticket. And so these things just...
The ticket agent at Air Canada wasn't very happy with me commenting on that very thing.
So I think Jeff is right. I don't know if the customer thinks it's broken, and so I'm curious. Is it pricing you're talking about?
No, it's misleading.
It's broken.
It's misleading.
It's but I think it's in so many walks of life now that there's it says $9.99, but you add on this, add on that, and then you get your final price, and it all will come down to supply and demand, because at some point, if you add too much, the customer will say, I'm not going, and I'm not going to pay, and then they stop coming. And that's when people like Jeff and myself will wake up and say, oh, we got to lower the prices here to get them back in the building. So I so often look at supply and demand, and our seats, you have a very fixed number of seats, and you need to optimize your pricing for those seats, frankly. So the fan will dictate how much you can charge.
I get that.
The more, and then the charges that go into that, like I used to manage sales for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I joke, we could have had a 200,000 seat stadium, and I would have sold every ticket. And a lot of fans, it's only 10 games, they would sell 2 or 3 of their tickets and make all their money back and actually have free tickets for the year, because it's so hard to get Eagles tickets. And so we had different surcharges and secondary fees and all this other stuff, but I think at the end of the day it'll come down to it's all supply and demand and what the customer is willing to spend.
Sure. We got time for one more question and then open it up.
Well, we got 5 minutes.
Got 5 minutes? Okay, Jeff, this is going to be just for you.
Oh.
Special question just for Jeff.
Yeah.
We're all getting them. This is like Oprah.
What happened to the curtains in his living room?
I told you, I got it off the couch. It wasn't the curtains.
So let's talk about cannabis just for a minute. We don't have a lot of time. In terms of...
Ask the guy with the weird jacket about cannabis, is that it?
In terms of its potential impact on the fan experience, the potential impact on food and beverage, that's supposed to be a joke.
Enhancing the fan experience.
Make sure you put, Jeff, that section, that new cannabis section, beside one of your top concession stands.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, I think we're still evolving in Canada with cannabis, but I believe it's going to affect sports in a pretty profound way in a few areas. Number one, it's not every day that a significant new sponsorship category opens up. And right now, everything's pretty conservative about what you can do advertising-wise, but I think cannabis is going to be right up there with beer and quick service restaurants and all of that. Some of the top banking. It will be a significant area of sponsorship as the rules lighten and they can do things. And of course, the second part of that is, what do sponsors want? They want access. I mean, why do we get so much from our beer sponsor? Because they sell beer in the stadium. And why do we get so much from Pepsi or Coke? Because they sell their product in the stadium. And I mean, cannabis is going to be part of going to a sporting event, and people are going to expect it. And they're going to be, you know, most of consumption of cannabis is not smoked, by the way, even today, and it's getting less and less and less. I think you're going to see a day where you're going to go and you're going to order a bud, and they're going to say, an alcohol bud or a cannabis bud? A bud was maybe the real good example, I guess, but Coors or what have you. But and the same thing with, I think you'll have edibles on site.
Yeah.
These major cannabis companies are going to want concession stands and access, and I think it's inevitable.
And then you won't have a lot of trouble with your soccer fans anymore. It'll be nice and relaxed.
And here comes the inevitable Doritos joke. No, I'm just kidding. Your time for a couple of questions?
Sure.
Okay, let's have a couple of questions. Say your name, rank, serial number.
Nobody.
Or does everybody just want to leave? Is that the idea?
Jeff, how is if you can't advertise cigarettes with a smoking or with a sporting event, how are you going to be able to advertise cannabis with a smoking event or a sporting event?
I think you're matching up cannabis with the wrong partner. You can advertise spirits and alcohol, and really cannabis is more being managed and looked at like alcohol more than cigarettes, I think.
Is that your view, or is that what's actually happening in the industry? And
Well,
I say
would
that not knowing the
both.
answer.
And I think to Jeff's point, like, most people aren't smoking it. It's a different type of product. You know what I mean? I shouldn't say most people aren't smoking it.
You're from LA.
Most
I don't
people
think
are.
they're different there.
It's legal there too, by the way.
Will you
So,
be able to have a smoking section at your stadium, or will that be akin to smoking cigarettes? And here in Toronto, you can't smoke within 9 meters of a building.
Yeah, well, at the Redblacks, we do have a smoking section. Right now, it's not permissible to smoke cannabis in the same area that you smoke cigarettes. But again, the government started out ultra conservative. It's going to evolve and loosen up, and I think, you know, if you still have a smoking section in 5 years, I think you'll be able to smoke cannabis too.
Bill, a question for you. What do you do to cure the ARGO'S attendance woes?
So actually, ARGO'S are up over 1,800 paid tickets a game, and so it's yeah, and so we stopped giving out comp tickets because, you know, anyone who's been in the industry a long time, the more you give tickets out, those fans won't buy. We really focused on the MLSE family of teams, and we you know, Maple Leafs fans, Raptors fans, TFC fans, we went after, and we saw a real plus. Now, you know, our paid attendance this year, we're probably 14,000 or so, but we still have a ways to go. But it was quite an increase from what we saw, you know, a year ago when the team actually came and won a championship. So we're really enthused by that. That was our one real kind of plus that we had this year, and we're going to build on that. And I just think having the 100 salespeople that we have at MLSE and the resources that we have and the fan bases that we have with the other teams, we saw a lot of new fans coming to Argos this year that had never been to Argos games before. And I think with the kind of introduction of the Raptors-esque game day experience, we've gotten good experience from that. Hopefully we can improve our product on the field a little bit, being where Jeff's in a conference final coming up. But we're actually really pleased with where we got to this year in terms of increased paid attendance.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Trevor Aiello. I'm a student at the University of Alberta. Kind of building on that attendance question a little bit, I had a really interesting discussion yesterday about U Sports, kind of our NCAA here version of
esports or youth sports?
U Sports,
okay.
our governing body for Canadian university sport. At U Sports events, we have pretty atrocious attendance, to be honest. We do output a really high quality product, and specifically at University of Alberta, we have a really fine athletic tradition. Most of our teams are nationally ranked. We get dismal attendance. We have maybe one event a year that has a full house, and that's our season opening football game. How, through a fan experience point of view, would we go about fixing that? How do you improve those numbers?
I'll tackle that one if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I spent 9 years coaching at the University of New Brunswick before moving to LA, and I'm going to be very blunt. Like, university sport in Canada does not know how to market itself. Until they figure that out, and that's been decades-old problem. From branding to the confused branding that they have. It's the third logo they've had in 15 or I guess 18 years. Until they figure that kind of thing out, I think they're always going to have challenges. And until they invest some marketing dollars in it, and I mean some real marketing dollars, I think they're always going to struggle. The quality of play is outstanding. And I say this in the United States, like some of the lectures that I give down there. The quality of play in youth sports is every bit as good as it is in the NCAA, even at Division I level. Probably with the exception of football and basketball in most cases, the exception of Carleton. But it really comes down to marketing. They've got a great product. If you look at a marketing mix, it's a great product. They have no idea how to price it, how to promote it, package it.
I don't think you want everything that comes with the NCAA.
No, you don't. But it's a much smaller base of organizations that you have in Canada, and you can take some of the good. Because I'll tell you, in the NCAA, for all their faults, they get branding, they get marketing like nobody else.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you very much, folks.